Let's talk about the CIA and the FBI. Not long ago, the CIA and the FBI were seen as the last line of defense against America's enemies. They were hunting down spies and bad guys, they were keeping the country safe. But today, they're unrecognizable, weaponized, not against foreign threats, but against you and me. These agencies have become obsessed with political correctness, and they're openly hostile to anyone who dares question the establishment. This is why Trump's rumored picks for FBI director and director of national intelligence, not rumored picks, I'm sorry, but his picks, FBI director and director of national intelligence, Kash Patel and Tulsi Gabbard, are sending shockwaves through the deep state. These two don't just threaten the cushy careers of the bureaucrats running these agencies, they threaten the entire system, a system designed to protect itself, not you or me. But how did we get here? How did the FBI and CIA go from Cold War heroes to deep state enforcers? Our guest today, J. Michael Waller, has the answers. J. Michael Waller is the author of Big Intel: How the CIA and FBI Went from Cold War Heroes to Deep State Villains. He's not just an observer, he was inside the machine. He worked as an asset for CIA Director William Casey during the Cold War. He was on the ground in Moscow as the Soviet Union collapsed and has spent his career studying how intelligence agencies manipulate public perception. He holds a PhD in international relations. He taught the US military how to counter propaganda and even trained future intelligence officers in political warfare. So if anyone understands how the rot spread through America's intelligence agencies, it's him. Michael asserts that Marxist ideology is at the root of the problem. And he doesn't just say it as a slur, which we hear all the time. People are always just throwing it out there. It's the Marxists, it's the Marxists. No, Michael has actually figured out and documented the historical background to back it up. So tonight, he's going to walk through how, when, and who exactly implemented Marxist ideology into the intel community and into our colleges. So tonight, we're going to break that all down, how the FBI and CIA lost their way, why they fear Trump's picks for top intelligence positions, and what it will take to purge the deep state for good. But before we get into tonight's conversation, are you a yo-yo dieter? You diet, you lose weight, you gain it all back, plus an extra few pounds. Then later you lose it and regain it again and again and again. Well, that is dangerous. Studies show that it can increase your risk of heart attack, stroke, type 2 diabetes, and other health problems. Breaking free of your yo-yo diet pattern is a main reason doctors created Lean. Lean is a supplement, not an injection, and you don't need a prescription. The science behind Lean is really impressive. It studied natural ingredients that target weight loss in 3 powerful ways. Lean helps maintain healthy blood sugar, it helps control appetite and cravings, and it helps burn fat by converting fat into energy. So listen, if you're tired of losing weight and gaining it all back, and if you want to lose meaningful weight at a healthy pace, then Lean was created for you. So let me get you started with 20% off when you enter Kim20 at takelean.com. That's code Kim20 at takelean.com. Michael, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, great to be with you, Kim.
I want to start off with the latest with the FBI. I want to get into a lot of this background stuff that you talk about, how the FBI and CIA were taken over by Marxists. A lot of people kind of use that as a slur. They don't really have any meaning, but you actually lay out in your book actual, like a real showcasing of, yes, actual Marxists took this over. It's not just a insult. You're saying it's a real thing. And I want to get into that. But first, I want to talk about Kash Patel and the current state of the FBI and what you think Kash might do for the FBI. They seem to be really afraid of this guy. The news now is they're not going to be holding the vote until next week. We were kind of hoping the vote would be yesterday, like with RFK and Tulsi, but instead they're saying it'll be next week with Kash. Now Democrats are actually saying they want a second hearing with him in the committee. They're like, we want round 2. We got more questions. Why are they afraid of Kash Patel?
Because he's not a Washington insider who wants to be on good terms with everybody and join a law firm as a partner or get on corporate boards or whatever else, meaning to profit from his time in the FBI. He doesn't want to make friends. He wants to accomplish a mission, and that's why they're afraid of him.
What is that mission that he has that makes them frightened?
Well, the mission is to, first, the FBI has become a decrepit organization. In addition to being obsolete in many ways, to being top heavy, and then abusing its power. And so he wants to
Hmm.
correct all of that. A lot of senators are afraid of this. They're afraid they're afraid of the FBI itself. I mean, Senator Chuck Schumer even said when Trump was in office the first time, says, "You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday from getting back at you." Meaning he's talking about this as a senator and about Trump as president. So if senators are afraid, the most powerful senator is afraid of the FBI and the CIA, that's a real threat to our whole country.
Yeah. I think they've been afraid for a long time. I mean, we're all very suspicious now with the release of all the JFK files over the years that the CIA was, they seem to be implicated in at least knowing about it, if not planning it, right? I mean, they certainly knew the things that they claim they never knew, like about Oswald and whatever. So there's definitely a fear that, excuse me, oh, I had a sneeze. Um, there's definitely, I at some point the CIA and the FBI was particularly the CIA. I think, like where are the checks and balances on that organization? If we think that they do seem way too powerful. I mean, the fact that you said that the senators are afraid of them. I mean, how do you even so then how do you even dismantle that? Like
Yeah,
if a president could potentially be offed, which is kind of my point about bringing up JFK. If a president could be offed, I mean, they can't even possibly be afraid of Trump. They're just like, oh yeah, another one. We'll just get rid of that guy too.
they're afraid of anyone who stands in their way because there are a couple things here. They view themselves as the protectors of what they view the country is all about, really accountable to no one. Well, that's unconstitutional. That's illegal.
Right.
That's a threat to our whole way of life that they claim to be protecting. And then it's become a club. It's become a fraternity, a society. I guess you can't say fraternity anymore under DEI, but you know the idea. It's its own internal uniparty type society and a big industry that goes around it. And so anybody that's a threat to that, they blame as a threat to the country. And this was
Yeah.
before the real politicization took place.
And they were so afraid of Tulsi Gabbard, and that was that. And as director of national intelligence, I mean, she really only has two jobs, and one of them is the budget, right, of for all the intelligence agencies, and the other one is just delivering the daily brief that she doesn't even get to really put together. I mean, she gets to edit it, but it's not like she's the one gathering the intelligence, deciding on what's going to, and then saying this is the real intel. The CIA still gives this to her, right? I mean, it's
Right.
coming still from the CIA.
There are whole teams for that. It's primarily from the CIA, but really to think, why would you ever want the CEO of a organization to give a briefing when that person doesn't have the answers to the questions that the briefing will raise? Why not
Mhm.
have the people who actually produce the information brief the president? So it's been a kind of a practice with certain CIA directors and then directors of national intelligence that they want that face time with the president so that they can have political heft and power throughout the bureaucracies. It's not really
Right.
to reform the president. If you're giving a brief on some obscure part of the world or some complicated issue, why would you have somebody who doesn't know anything about it give the brief? You want the
Right.
expert to give the brief. So that's part of the problem with the president's daily brief. But the fear
Yeah.
of Gabbard is different. She got burned as a Democrat by the intelligence community. She was groundlessly labeled a potential terrorist, and she and her husband were labeled threats to aviation, which showed on their boarding passes. They got extra
Yeah.
special treatment at the airport. As a sitting member of Congress and as a Democrat, she was a Democrat who got off the plantation. They can't allow that.
Yeah. Yeah, the fear though of like her editing the daily brief, and cutting what the CIA wants the president to see, and then she says, "Well, the president doesn't need to see this or whatever." I mean, it just has them running scared. I mean, it's just the most ridiculous thing. Tell us about your history with the FBI. How did you get involved with it? Were you an FBI agent or were you involved in some other capacity?
No, no, I was involved in national security issues from when I was just starting out. I mean, I actually first got interested in high school when I was an environmental activist against a nuclear power plant being built in our state. I was 15, 16 years old. And then it was just out of pure environmental concerns. And then I got some training and some professionals came in to train us. And then they put me through what I later learned was a struggle session. Then they started to get me to try to tear myself apart. And they said, why
What's
do
a
you want
struggle session?
to
I've heard that before,
get,
but what is it?
it's a Maoist concept that, where they sit you down and they break you down as a person to take away all your self-confidence, your sense of self-worth, and to make yourself psychologically their instrument. And then you'll do
How
whatever.
does that work? Like what types of things would they say in a struggle session?
Well, I didn't last long enough in the struggle session to find out what would really happen, because I said, to hell with this. I'm not going to, this is not what I signed up for. But
Yeah.
but a struggle session would be like to break you down to you're isolated, and there are, one or two or three good cop, bad cop people coming in, and one who you'll gravitate because that one's the nice person, and the other one that you're scared of,
Mhm.
and so forth. And they try to get you to admit that everything you ever believed was wrong, that you're stupid, that your family is worthless, that your family's out to get you, that family as a concept is a false construct, that you have to be loyal to a cause, not to your country, not to your family, not to your faith, not to your friends, but to this cause. And they break you down to make you psychologically submissive to this cause. Even if you're not a submissive person by nature, you will submit to this under a struggle session.
So I've heard the term thrown out here and there, but what you're describing, the one thing that pops in my mind as kind of like a mass struggle session, I feel like that's happened where they're not necessarily isolated, but it seems like, all of the what was it that they were teaching in schools, where they were telling the white kids like, "Oh, you're white, so you have all these problems and it's terrible and you've been lied to your whole life and you've been taking advantage of other people your whole life just because of the virtue of the color of your skin."
Yeah.
What was that called that they were calling that? It wasn't, gosh, there's so many terms these days, but they critical race theory, right?
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like critical race theory was like, developed under this struggle session ideology.
It was precisely developed under that. So critical race theory is to put people of different races in conflict with one another, and ethnicities in conflict with one another, and to direct negative attention and abuse toward certain races, in this case people of European extraction, and
Yeah.
especially Christians of European extraction, even though that's not race. And then but critical race theory is just one part of something larger called critical theory. So you have critical law theory, which preceded critical race theory, where it is using the law as a weapon for social change. And you tear down the whole construct of what is the American legal system for? Who started? Well, it was white men who started it. It was white slavers who started it. It was there to keep a white male patriarchy oppressing everybody else. Therefore, we're going to use their legal system to bring the whole system down. That's
Ah.
critical law theory. And that comes from critical theory, which was developed by people who had been in the Soviet employ in the 1930s. This goes back a century. It goes back to the 1920s, actually, where, and I trace this in Big Intel, because in writing the book, it was about how did the CIA and FBI become so radicalized. So I thought, okay, I'll write it about Obama, Trump, and Biden and what happened in that period. But then tracing back the origins of critical theory in the FBI, critical law theory, as well as critical race theory, I learned more about how it started. And it was started by German Communist Party intellectuals who were working with the Soviets, who met in Moscow in 1922, traced it straight to a meeting in Moscow, at which a representative of Vladimir Lenin was there. The head of what became the KGB was there. And this was to tear down then European societies from within, because they thought we cannot replicate a Bolshevik revolution in Western Europe and North America. We have to do it by some other means. So let's take Germany, which was just defeated after World War I, and it was very demoralized. And there was a sense of trying to unite Germany into a stable society. And let's create so much instability. Let's tear out the political center of the country. Let's demonize that center as the enemy. And then the whole center will collapse. And then we can fight the Nazis on the other side, which was just a tiny group then, and then take power. So, but it backfired on them because when the Marxists destroyed the political center of Germany, they inadvertently helped Hitler take power. So they fled Nazi Germany, and many of them came to the United States and settled at Columbia University with the help of a Soviet intelligence officer, military intelligence. And they set up their school that was in Frankfurt, Germany. It's called the Frankfurt School at Columbia University to take over the teaching college and to work with what was then the new National Education Association Union, who was sympathetic to these goals, and to spend generations changing the way all of us think and all of us believe for that long-term cultural revolution that Marx had written about before he even wrote the Communist Manifesto.
What was it that they said to the Germans in the 20s? I mean, what was the struggle session type thing, or the theory, the critical theory that they were trying to impose on the Germans to get them to turn against their system?
Yeah, so the critical theory developed over time, and it wasn't called critical theory back then, but it was an
Mhm.
German individual named Herbert Marcuse. And what they did was they took Marxist ideology and Freudian psychology to make it more interesting and more fun. So Berlin at the time was sort of the most it was kind of like the San Francisco of Germany at that period.
Mhm.
So it was where, every lifestyle was great unless it was traditional values lifestyle. When it was, then you had, imagine combining LA and San Francisco and those two cultures. So the entertainment culture, the media culture, the arts culture, and so forth. And you combine all of that with a sexualized Marxism to fight against everybody that's oppressing you. So, well, the German state is oppressive because it started World War One, and and it's also repressing the separate German states because it was a federation.
Mhm.
And then the royal family is oppressive, but then the wealthy industrialists are oppressive, and then the institutions are oppressive, the churches are oppressive, the culture is oppressive, everything is oppressive, and they're oppressing us from what we want to do. So we have to fight them. So that got a lot of people who didn't care all about Marxism, but did have one kind of grievance or another because they wanted to have different, very public social lives and change the whole culture of Germany through arts and media and music and entertainment and so forth. So the intellectual base was developed at the school in Frankfurt, Germany, and then they wanted to have also support the street battles with the Nazis or against the Nazis at that time too. And they backed away from Stalin. I mean, there's a whole lot of ideological stuff, but they wanted to have communism without Stalinism, and they
Uh-huh.
wanted to have a revolution without murderous Bolshevik type revolution. And so this is what they envisioned.
Right. So they just had their own goals as to why they wanted to implement this sort of society. And I know I have friends that claim to be Marxists or communists, for example, and they have, their vision is, and it sounds nice when they say it. They'll say things like, there's a lot of inequality. We've got a lot of homelessness. We have these people that are, you got all these rich people and they're running off with all the money, and all the rest of us are like, so you can easily rile up a group of people, especially people that are struggling. I mean, if
Yeah.
people are poor and struggling, and they think the government is the cause of that struggle, then it's easy to then say to them, well, then we have to have a new system. So let me show you the new system that would actually be better for you. You'll end up with money. You'll end up with a lifestyle. You'll end up better than you are right now. And
You'll
this
end
is what
up
needs to
free under
happen.
Marxism. Yeah,
Yeah,
Marxism is
right,
freedom. And yeah,
right.
exactly. And it's appealing. A lot of these things, I mean, they're right in saying that there are injustices and there are poor people and there are oppressive institutions and characters and so forth. The real question is, what do you do about them?
Yeah,
Marxists want to
right. I
overthrow
mean,
everything.
yeah, right. Rather than just looking at capitalism and understanding the inherent flaw in capitalism that has to constantly be controlled, which is capitalism by nature reels into monopolies. And, I mean, without any controls, you end up with these big behemoths and these monopolies, and then they make a lot of money, and they can just, especially once they have a lot of money, they can even make more money. That's how capitalism kind of works. And
Mhm.
if you don't put any controls on that, then it can become a really awful, awful system. Of course, our governments have tried to put some controls in there, like, monopoly busting tactics. But I could see that rather than just saying, look, we can maintain the same game. We just have to put rules in it.
Mhm.
It's like monopoly with rules, right? Rather than monopoly without rules.
Separation of
Like we need the
powers in
rules,
our case, yeah. And
right?
then
Like we
also
need these rules.
you would teach kids, don't resent the wealthy, be part of it. Invest, this is how you buy shares in stocks, and anybody can work the markets to become wealthy too. So imagine uh, letting high school kids be aware, even elementary school kids be aware.
Yeah,
All of you
right.
can take part of this growth. Certainly, a lot of people are going to be incredibly rich, but everybody can uplift themselves by being part of the system. And the parts that are still unjust, let's address that too.
Thanks for watching this clip from the full Kim Iversen show. If you want to watch the full show, just visit KimIversonShow.com. The show airs every Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Again, it's KimIversonShow.com. See you there.